Welcome back to ABC General Hospital Spoilers channel. Today, we will learn about the explosive developments unfolding in Port Charles this Wednesday, January 7th. As multiple storylines collide in dramatic fashion, the tension reaches a boiling point as Charlotte Casadini finds herself cornered by the truth, while the courtroom drama surrounding Willow Kane's trial intensifies with shocking revelations that could change everything. Meanwhile, dangerous threats from the criminal underworld force Valentin Casadini to make impossible choices, and Tracy discovers she's been manipulated in ways she never anticipated. Charlotte's reckoning at Lulu's house. The afternoon takes a dramatic turn when Charlotte arrives home to Lulu Spencer's residence, completely unprepared for what awaits her inside. As she steps through the door, her entire demeanor shifts instantly, resembling a deer frozen in headlights when she spots Nathan West standing in the living room. The young girl's face drains of color as Lulu confronts her directly, making it crystal clear that Nathan is there specifically to discuss the dangerous stunt Charlotte orchestrated earlier in the day. The atmosphere grows thick with tension as Charlotte realizes there's no easy escape from this confrontation. The critical question hanging in the air concerns exactly how much Nathan knows about Charlotte's secretive activities. Did the detective manage to track her movements all the way to Carly's house, where her father Valentin has been hiding in the attic? Or did Nathan's investigation only lead him as far as the Courtroom stables, where young Danny Morgan became Charlotte's accomplice by transporting her the remaining distance to her ultimate destination? The uncertainty of the situation makes Charlotte's predicament even more precarious. Valentin had explicitly warned his daughter about the dangers of believing she could move around undetected. He stressed that even if she thought nobody was following her, sophisticated tracking methods or observant eyes could have monitored her every move throughout Port Charles. Modern technology makes it nearly impossible to remain truly invisible, especially when law enforcement has reasons to watch certain individuals closely. Now that Charlotte stands exposed before her mother and Nathan, she must quickly decide how to handle this confrontation. Will she attempt to lie her way out of trouble, risking deeper consequences when the truth inevitably emerges? Or will she come clean about visiting her father, potentially exposing Valentin's hiding place and putting him in immediate danger of arrest? Courtroom fireworks and Jacinda's testimony. Back inside the tense atmosphere of the Port Charles courthouse, Willow Kane's trial has reconvened for another session that promises explosive testimony. Jacinda Bracken sits on the witness stand, visibly distraught with tears streaming down her face as Alexis Davis conducts a relentless cross-examination. The defense attorney shows no mercy in her pursuit of the truth, demanding answers that could completely dismantle the prosecution's case against Willow. Alexis focuses her questioning with laser precision, asking Jacinda point-blank to identify who she was actually with during the critical time period when Drew Kane was shot. The options presented create an impossible dilemma for the witness. Was Jacinda truly with Michael Corinthos, as she initially claimed, providing him with an alibi? Or was she with someone else entirely, making her testimony about Michael's whereabouts a complete fabrication? The courtroom spectators lean forward in their seats, recognizing that Jacinda's answer could determine the entire outcome of this trial. Adding further pressure to the situation, Ezra Boyle has already provided sworn testimony admitting he was with Jacinda at a motel on that specific night, though his timeline seemed deliberately vague and inconsistent. Alexis demonstrated her thorough preparation by producing the actual log sheet from the motel, waving the document before Jacinda and exposing the discrepancies in Ezra's previous testimony. The evidence in Alexis's hand makes it virtually impossible for Jacinda to maintain her story without committing obvious perjury. Now the witness faces a terrible choice. Will she continue lying to preserve Michael's alibi, knowing that her false testimony could send an innocent woman to prison? Or will Alexis's aggressive questioning techniques finally extract the truth from her unwilling lips? Drew's explosive courtroom outburst. The tension in the courtroom reaches its peak when Drew Kane suddenly jumps to his feet, unable to contain himself any longer. He shouts directly at Willow, his voice echoing through the chamber as he declares triumphantly, That is reasonable doubt. His outburst reveals his satisfaction with how Alexis's defense strategy is unfolding, even though his motivations remain deeply twisted and self-serving. Drew's true agenda has nothing to do with justice and everything to do with destroying Michael Corinthos by any means necessary. Alexis has brilliantly constructed her defense around proving reasonable doubt, methodically demonstrating that numerous alternative scenarios exist beyond the prosecution's narrative that Willow pulled the trigger. By showing that other individuals had opportunity, means, and motive to shoot Drew, Alexis creates enough uncertainty to potentially secure Willow's acquittal. However, Drew's interest in these proceedings extends far beyond the outcome of Willow's trial itself. The shocking truth driving Drew's behavior involves his despicable blackmail scheme targeting Willow. He has made horrifying threats, promising that if Michael doesn't face prosecution and conviction for the shooting, then Willow and her remaining daughters will never see Scout Kane again. Drew is essentially weaponizing his own daughter, using Scout as leverage to force Willow's cooperation in framing Michael for a crime he didn't commit. The depths of Drew's cruelty know no bounds as he manipulates everyone around him to achieve his revenge against Michael. While Drew appears satisfied with the reasonable doubt emerging during Jacinda's testimony, he remains fixated on his ultimate goal of watching Michael face criminal charges. However, the trial continues with additional witnesses still scheduled to testify and more evidence to be presented. Drew may be celebrating prematurely, counting his chickens before they hatch, as courtroom proceedings often take unexpected turns. His wife Willow should also exercise caution before assuming the outcome is certain. Valentin's dire warning to Carly. Meanwhile, high in Carly's attic hideout, Valentin Casadini engages in a serious conversation with his reluctant host about the necessity of his immediate departure from Port Charles. Carly struggles to understand his reasoning, especially since their collaborative plan to bring down Jack Brennan remains incomplete and vulnerable. Valentin explains his decision with grave urgency, revealing that new threats have emerged that make his continued presence a danger to everyone around him. Charlotte apparently shared disturbing information with both her father and grandmother about Jen Sidwell and the implied threats this dangerous criminal has made regarding little Ace Casadini. Sidwell represents a completely different category of threat compared to the adversaries they've previously encountered. Valentin makes a crucial distinction clear to Carly. There are certain moral lines that Jack Brennan, despite his ruthlessness, would never cross in his pursuit of power and control. However, Sidwell operates without any such restraints or ethical boundaries, making him exponentially more dangerous and unpredictable. The criminal mastermind has already demonstrated his willingness to target innocent children by threatening Ace, a helpless toddler who poses no threat to anyone. This unconscionable act proves that nobody in Valentin's orbit remains safe from Sidwell's reach. Valentin's greatest fear involves the possibility that Sidwell might harm Charlotte or endanger Carly and her family members simply because of their association with him. By remaining hidden in Carly's home, Valentin potentially paints a target on everyone living under that roof. The weight of Valentin's decision becomes clear as he contemplates leaving before completing their mission against Brennan. His protective instincts as a father override his desire for revenge, forcing him to prioritize Charlotte's safety above all other considerations. Carly's continued involvement with Valentin's schemes could bring Sidwell's wrath down upon the Spencer Corinthos family, creating cascading consequences that nobody can fully predict or control. Tracy's devastating realization. Inside the Courtroom mansion, Tracy sits on the elegant couch in the living room, her face reflecting profound upset and anger as she processes a stunning realization. She confesses to someone nearby, her voice tight with frustration, "She played me, and I fell for it." The admission costs Tracy considerable pride, as she has always prided herself on her sharp instincts and ability to see through manipulation. Being outmaneuvered represents a particularly bitter pill for someone of Tracy's intelligence and experience to swallow. The question remains, who managed to deceive the formidable Tracy Quartermain so thoroughly? It seems unlikely that Charlotte's innocent desire to ride her beloved horse Hades would provoke such an intense emotional reaction from Tracy. The depth of her distress suggests something far more significant than a young girl's equestrian activities. Tracy reserves this level of anger for situations involving genuine betrayal or manipulation that affects serious matters like family business or legal proceedings. Given the ongoing nature of Willow's trial, Tracy will almost certainly be called to testify as a witness, given her connections to the key players and her presence in the Courtroom household. Her statement about being played might refer to Alexis Davis and the clever questioning techniques the defense attorney employed during Tracy's time on the witness stand. The longtime rivalry between Tracy and Alexis means any interaction between them carries extra tension and competitive energy. Tracy may be expressing frustration that Alexis manipulated her testimony in ways that inadvertently damaged her own interests or those of Michael, whom Tracy has grown to respect despite their complicated family dynamics. The possibility exists that Tracy's answers, given under oath and crafted by Alexis's strategic questioning, have made the situation worse for the Courtroom family regarding Drew's shooting investigation. For someone who values control as much as Tracy does, realizing she was outmaneuvered in such a public forum cuts especially deep. Her admission that she fell for it represents a rare moment of vulnerability from a woman who typically maintains an impenetrable facade of confidence and superiority in all situations. Next, we will learn about the explosive courtroom drama that has Port Charles buzzing Michael. Corinthos' entire defense strategy is collapsing right before our eyes. And what happened during the January 5th episode might just be the beginning of his complete downfall. The walls are closing in on Michael Corinthos faster than anyone could have anticipated. What started as a seemingly bulletproof defense has transformed into a nightmare scenario that even the most seasoned Corinthos family members couldn't have predicted. The carefully orchestrated alibi that Michael believed would shield him from scrutiny has just been blown to pieces in the most dramatic courtroom testimony Port Charles has witnessed in years. The bombshell that changed everything. When Ezra Boyle took that witness stand, you could feel the tension crackling through the air like electricity before a lightning strike. This political fixer, a man who has made a career out of keeping secrets and manipulating situations behind the scenes, suddenly became the most important witness in this entire trial. His testimony wasn't just damaging, it was absolutely devastating to Michael's carefully constructed narrative. Ezra testified under oath, with his hand on that Bible and everything, that he was personally with Jacinda Bracken at a hotel on the night of September 2nd, 2025. Let that sink in for a moment. The exact same night that Michael Corinthos claims Jacinda was with him, providing him with an airtight alibi for when Drew Kane was shot. The implications are staggering. If Ezra is telling the truth and there's no reason to believe a political operative would risk perjury charges for no benefit, then Michael's entire alibi is built on lies. The courtroom erupted into absolute pandemonium. Jurors who had been sitting stoically through hours of testimony suddenly came alive, exchanging shocked glances and leaning forward in their seats. The gallery, packed with Port Charles residents hungry for every scandalous detail, couldn't contain their reactions. Gasps echoed off the wood-paneled walls. Some spectators covered their mouths in disbelief. Others whispered frantically to their neighbors, trying to make sense of what they'd just heard. And Michael, the man at the center of this maelstrom, sat frozen, his carefully composed mask of confidence cracking for just a moment. You could see it in his eyes, the realization that his pay for protection had just evaporated into thin air. This wasn't supposed to happen. Jacinda was supposed to be reliable. The money he paid her was supposed to guarantee her loyalty. But in that instant, Michael understood that no amount of cash can compete with the cold, hard truth when it's spoken under oath. Jacinda's moment of truth. Following Ezra's explosive testimony, all eyes turned to Jacinda Bracken herself. This woman, who had been positioned as Michael's salvation, suddenly found herself in an impossible situation. When she was called to the stand, the atmosphere in that courtroom shifted from chaos to suffocating tension. Every person in that room knew that what she said next could determine not just Willow's fate, but Michael's future as well. Jacinda began her testimony by confirming certain basic facts. Yes, she had connected with Michael at the Port Charles Grill on September 2nd. Yes, they had spoken. The beginning of her testimony aligned perfectly with Michael's version of events, and for a brief moment, it seemed like perhaps Ezra had been mistaken or was deliberately lying to harm Michael. But then Alexis Davis, brilliant attorney that she is, asked the question that everyone in that courtroom had been waiting for. The question that would either vindicate Michael or expose him as a liar. Were you with Michael Corinthos when Drew Kane was shot? Simple words. Straightforward query. The kind of yes or no question that should have an immediate answer. Jacinda went silent. Not just a pause to gather her thoughts complete. Uncomfortable, damning silence. Her eyes darted around the courtroom as if searching for an escape route that didn't exist. She shifted in her seat. Her hands gripped the edge of the witness box. The seconds stretched into an eternity as everyone watched this woman wrestle with a decision that would alter multiple lives forever. That hesitation told the entire story without a single word being spoken. Jacinda is trapped between two equally terrible choices. If she lies and says yes, she with Michael when Drew was shot, she commits perjury. Criminal charges would follow. Her life would be destroyed. But if she tells the truth and admits that Ezra's testimony is accurate, then Michael's credibility explodes. The man she's been romantically involved with, because let's be honest, there's clearly more than just a business arrangement here, would be exposed as someone willing to pay for false testimony. The romantic entanglement adds another layer of complexity to this already messy situation. Jacinda isn't just protecting a client or someone who paid her. She's protecting someone she has genuine feelings for. That emotional connection makes her testimony even more unpredictable. Will loyalty to Michael override her instinct for self-preservation? Or will the fear of prison time force her to tell the truth, even if it destroys the man she cares about? Kristina's desperate intervention. Before Jacinda ever took that stand, there was another crucial piece of this puzzle that reveals just how desperate the Corinthos family has become. Kristina Corinthos Davis, Michael's sister, showed up with a backpack stuffed full of cash. We're not talking about a few $100s here. This was serious money, the kind of amount that could facilitate someone disappearing completely. Kristina's plan was straightforward, but illegal. Get Jacinda out of Port Charles before she could be compelled to testify. Bribe her to skip town, disappear into the wind, and never answer questions about that September night. The desperation radiating from Kristina was palpable. She knows her brother is in serious trouble. She understands that Jacinda's testimony could be the final nail in Michael's coffin. And like any Corinthos, when family is threatened, rules and laws become inconvenient suggestions rather than boundaries. But Jacinda made a choice. She didn't take the money and run. She didn't flee to avoid testifying. She stayed in Port Charles, walked into that courtroom, and took the stand. Why? Perhaps because running would have been an admission of guilt in itself. Maybe she realized that taking money to skip town would make her look even worse than admitting the truth. Or possibly, just possibly, Jacinda has a conscience that won't allow her to help obstruct justice, even for someone she cares about. Kristina's attempted witness tampering isn't going to disappear just because it failed. Obstruction of justice is a serious crime, and if prosecutors discover that she tried to bribe a witness to flee before testifying, Kristina herself could face charges. The Corinthos family's attempts to protect Michael might end up creating even more legal problems for themselves. It's a classic case of the cover-up being worse than the crime. Michael takes the stand. According to spoilers for the January 6th episode, Michael Corinthos himself will take the witness stand. After everything that just transpired with Ezra's bombshell and Jacinda's conspicuous hesitation, Michael's testimony becomes absolutely critical. This is his chance to salvage something from the wreckage of his defense strategy. But it's also an opportunity for everything to completely fall apart. The pressure on Michael is immense and multifaceted. He knows that Alexis has successfully painted him as someone with multiple motives to want Drew Kane dead or at least seriously harmed. The custody battle over Wiley and Amelia. The corporate warfare over Aurora Media and DLQ. The personal betrayal of his ex-wife having an affair with his uncle. Every piece of circumstantial evidence points toward Michael having reasons to want Drew out of the picture. Now add to that the revelation that his alibi appears to be fabricated, purchased, a lie constructed with money and wrapped in false testimony. How does Michael explain that away? What possible justification can he offer that doesn't make him look guilty of something, even if he didn't pull the trigger himself? Michael faces several terrible options on that witness stand. He could attack Jacinda's credibility, suggesting she's lying or confused about the timeline. But that strategy risks drawing attention to the fact that he specifically chose her as his alibi witness. Why would he rely on someone whose testimony isn't reliable? The jury would immediately question his judgment or suspect that he knew all along the alibi was false. Alternatively, Michael could double down on his original story, insisting that he was with Jacinda and that Ezra is the one lying. But Ezra is a political operative with no apparent reason to commit perjury to harm Michael. What would Ezra gain from falsely testifying? This approach requires Michael to prove a negative always difficult in legal proceedings. Or Michael might try something completely unexpected. Perhaps he'll claim that he honestly believed Jacinda was with him, but that she left at some point without him realizing it. Maybe he'll suggest that both men were with Jacinda at different times that evening and that there's been an innocent confusion about the timeline. These explanations sound weak even as possibilities, but when you're drowning, you grab for any lifeline available. The transformation of Michael Corinthos. What's truly fascinating about this storyline is watching Michael's complete transformation. For years, he positioned himself as the moral Corinthos, the one who tried to do things the right way, who resisted the family's criminal tendencies, who wanted to build legitimate business empires rather than rely on mob connections. He was supposed to be different from Sonny and Jason, better than the violence and moral compromises that defined previous generations. But look at him now. Michael has become exactly what he claimed to despise. He pays women to provide false alibis in criminal trials. He manipulates evidence and witnesses. His sister attempts to bribe people to flee before testifying. The line between Michael and the mob tactics he once rejected has completely dissolved. Alexis Davis has masterfully shifted the narrative of this entire trial. What started as a simple question, did Willow Corinthos shoot Drew Kane, has evolved into a much more complex examination of Michael's actions and motives. The jury isn't just thinking about Willow anymore. They're wondering what Michael was doing that night. They're questioning why he needed a paid alibi. They're connecting dots that paint a very unflattering picture of a man willing to do anything to protect himself and control his world. What happens next? The January 6th episode promises absolute courtroom chaos when Michael testifies. Every word he speaks will be scrutinized by Alexis, analyzed by the jury, and dissected by everyone watching. One slip, one inconsistency, one moment of hesitation could be fatal to whatever remains of his credibility. Drew Kane is undoubtedly enjoying watching Michael squirm. The man who tried to destroy his relationship with Willow, who fought him for custody of the children, who attempted to push him out of Aurora Media, that man is now facing potential legal consequences of his own. There's probably a smirk on Drew's face as he watches Michael's carefully constructed world crumble. The jury has already seen enough to raise serious doubts about Michael's character and honesty. They've watched a political fixer contradict his alibi. They've observed Jacinda's damning silence when asked the crucial question. Now they'll evaluate Michael himself, watching his body language, listening for inconsistencies, and ultimately deciding whether anything he says can be trusted. This trial was supposed to determine Willow's guilt or innocence, but it has become so much more. It's an examination of the entire Corinthos family's willingness to lie, manipulate, and obstruct justice when their interests are threatened. The truth is emerging piece by piece, and that truth is far uglier than anyone anticipated. Tuesday's episode will reveal just how far Michael has fallen and whether there's any way back from the precipice he's created for himself.